Florida without objection. I'm pleased to recognize Mr. Jeff Fortenberry of Nebraska, a former member of this committee who has remained engaged on these issues, and particularly the plight of Christians and other religious minorities in this region of the world. Mr. Fortenberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Ambassadors, welcome. I'm sorry I didn't have the benefit of hearing the earlier conversation, but I do want to divert to the question that the Chairman just laid out. Before I do so, Ambassador Patterson, we met a number of years ago when you were in the consulate at Peshawar, Pakistan. That was a few days before there was an assassination or kidnapping attempt upon you. And then from there, as I recall, you went on to become ambassador in Pakistan as well as Egypt. So I just want to thank you for your many years of dedicated service in very difficult areas. I don't think we've had any interaction, Ambassador Nuland, but I appreciate both of your willingness to testify today. One of the grave concerns in the Middle East is this, and let me divert for a moment by telling you a story. I happened to be in an audience with Pope Francis a little while back, and he was presented a small Christian crucifix. It was worn by a young Syrian man who was captured by the jihadists, and he was told to convert, and he refused. And he chose his own ancient faith tradition, Christianity, and he was beheaded. His mother was able to recover his body and found the cross, and fled and made her way to Austria, where she settled as a refugee. And through that means, one of the persons that I was with in this audience was able to present that to Pope Francis. One of the more dramatic parts of this crisis that seems to come and go in regards to our attention is this deliberate, systematic attack on Christians and other faith traditions, including Yazidis and other religious minorities. And by the way, I have the largest Yazidi refugee population in America where I live in Lincoln, Nebraska. Is this genocide?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that's a legal term. I think there'll be some announcements on that very shortly.
Well, I would appreciate both of your willingness to engage robustly on this topic. The reason is we have, as the Chairman alluded to, introduced a resolution that does call this genocide. And while there are certain international legal implications from that, nonetheless, elevating the plight of Christians and other religious minorities in their own ancient homeland, including Syria, which is approximately, Christians are about 10% of the population, raises the international consciousness of this and provides a gateway for further strategy around defense and security measures, as well as, once all of this hopefully in the future stabilizes, reintegration of those populations back into their rightful homelands. And this is a very important, I think, gateway to use this resolution, or the resolution is an important gateway for not only the discussion to elevate consciousness, but again, a larger platform as to how to stabilize these areas and demand that the rich diversity of religious tradition that has existed in some of these areas be allowed to flourish, not only return, but flourish as a part of any political or security settlement moving forward. I think there are significant problems with this, obviously, in Iraq as well. We have been able to form a new burgeoning relationship with the Kurds, who have been very respectful of religious plurality and have undertaken waves of immigration or refugee populations and absorbed that, as well as the Jordanians and the Lebanese. This is a very important component as we move forward and think through a strategy that actually brings about some stability and maybe a political settlement moving forward. In this regard, there is another problem, however, that I'd like to point out. It's my understanding that we've only admitted 53 Christians as refugees from the conflict in Syria. So that's disproportionate, obviously, to the population size. Can you give any perspective on that, please?
My colleague Ann Richard was here with Mr. Rodriguez a few weeks ago to talk about refugee admission policy. And the numbers, I think we've admitted about, as of today, about a little over 2,000 Syrians, and we're planning to admit some more, of course. They have to meet very strict vetting requirements and research into their particular circumstances and background. I don't have an answer why the Christians are underrepresented.
I think one of the challenges is that Christians are generally not in refugee camps, so they will be diverse, or they'll be spread out through the population, whether it's in basement of a relative or in some church basement or in some other circumstance versus cordoned into some definable entity like a refugee camp. I think it's part of the problem, but clearly this segment of Syria's population is under grave stress, as are others.
Mr. Fortenberry, we entirely agree that these communities are under enormous stress, and we've been in close contact with them through their religious leaders, both in country and their religious leaders here in the U.S. And we're very mindful of the point you make that they have to be the most desirable outcome for them after thousands of years is that they be reintegrated into these countries and not dispersed. So we try to work with these communities. We try and sustain them. But I will take your point back about the refugee admissions and get you an answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for accommodating me today, and pleasure to speak with you both. Thank you.